Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Elizabeth Holmes' shocking defense strategy revealed. Attorneys for the former Theranos CEO say she'll likely take the stand and accuse her ex-boyfriend and COO of abuse. And R. Kelly's first male accuser takes the stand, saying he was groomed and sexually abused by the singer. The shocking testimony as another woman who says R. Kelly raped her in his dressing room at a concert when she was 17 years old, days after he secretly married Aaliyah. Plus,
I think that he thought he had killed me.
We speak to a survivor of the infamous railroad killer, her inspiring story of escaping a brutal attack by a serial killer, and later, the accused arsonist on trial.
I can't get out. I can't get out.
Opening statements in the Ohio case that left 9 people dead, including 5 children. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. We begin with R. Kelly's sex trafficking trial and the shocking testimony from 2 accusers. The first male accuser took the stand along with another young woman. Day 8 of the R. Kelly sex crimes and RICO trial began with another Jane Doe on the stand, Addie. Prosecutor Cruz Melendez questioned Addie as she described the single encounter she and a friend had with R. Kelly at the Budweiser Superfest in Miami. It was September 1994 when she was only 17 years old. Addie described going to the green room with who she believed were R. Kelly's bodyguards. Cruz Melendez showed the jury the VIP pass Addie had that day. It had R. Kelly's autograph, Addie's name, and the hotel room he invited her to. But she never went to the hotel, because after R. Kelly played music for the girls, asking them who was the better kisser, he allegedly took Addie and forced himself on her, having unprotected sex. Both girls ran out the room afterwards, but didn't make a report for over 2 decades. Next on the stand was the first male accuser. Lewis, who testified under a false name, met R. Kelly in Illinois when he was 17 years old, the age of consent in the state, and that R. Kelly gave him his number and promised to groom him as an artist after meeting him at a McDonald's. The relationship became sexual both one-on-one, as R. Kelly allegedly gave him oral sex in his garage with a boxing ring in it, and with others when R. Kelly allegedly snapped his fingers 3 times for a naked woman to emerge under his boxing ring and give them both oral sex. At the end of his direct, Lewis admitted that he was testifying under a cooperation agreement that after being charged with bribing someone, cooperating with the government not to testify against R. Kelly. A bribe R. Kelly was not aware of, something the defense hammered on as they started their cross-examination. In this trial, Jane Doe 1 is singer Aaliyah. Her uncle and former manager, Barry Hankerson, introduced her to R. Kelly when she was just a teen. He opened up this weekend on the Ricky Smiley Morning Show and says he nearly wanted to kill R. Kelly when he learned about the alleged abuse Aaliyah suffered.
Well, to be very honest with you, of course I was upset. And of course I had to really consider what my reaction would be.
Right.
I really found out I wasn't a hardcore criminal. I couldn't kill nobody.
Right.
So I just took it. You know, I'm a Muslim, and I went to Minister Farrakhan, and we just prayed about it,
Yes.
and just resolved ourselves to let God handle him.
Joining us today is legal analyst Dina Dahl and Terry Austin. Dina, R. Kelly isn't charged with sexual acts against Lewis. So how is the jury hearing about these allegations?
You know, prior bad acts are often let in to show, a plan, motive, opportunity. We saw that in the Harvey Weinstein case. We see it in the Robert Durst case. The judge makes a determination that this evidence is more probative than prejudicial, because it can be prejudicial to the defendant, because it may more likely show that they did something or did not do something. Because of that, his decision, the judge's decision, will be appealed if he is convicted. And we have seen cases overturned when an appellate court decides that the judge made the wrong call, that the evidence was actually more prejudicial than probative.
Absolutely, it's something that all judges have to evaluate, and of course, there's always an appeal that comes with cases like this. Terry, do you think the jury will have the same response towards R. Kelly that Hankerson has as they hear more and more about the allegations against R. Kelly?
I think not only the jury, but I think the public is going to have a similar response. I mean, the fact that at first Hankerson wanted to kill Kelly, that makes sense. I mean, this is someone he cares about as far as his niece is concerned. And he's her manager, but he said he prayed about it. He knew he wasn't a hardcore criminal, and he decided to let God handle it. There are those, though, that think he was in a position to protect her, and he really should have seen what was going on. So perhaps he should have been a little bit more observant as to what might have been going on around him.
Yeah, I can see the arguments on both sides. Terry, lastly, Lewis's testimony comes from a cooperation agreement when he tried to bribe someone to protect R. Kelly. Now, R. Kelly was not a witness to any of this, but Lewis said that he did so to protect R. Kelly. Does this help or hurt the prosecution's case?
Anytime you have a witness on the stand and they have a cooperation agreement or they've been accused of trying to bribe someone, that's going to hurt their credibility in front of the jury. But I think overall, it's going to show that R. Kelly definitely took advantage of anyone, male, female, young, old, the fact that he thought he could sexually abuse anyone under his control, under his power. So I think having this witness on the stand, even under these circumstances, even with the accusation of bribery, that it's going to, at the end of the day, benefit the prosecution.
Absolutely. Now, there are no cameras allowed in the R. Kelly trial because it's a federal court proceeding, but we'll, of course, give you updates as we get them. Turning now to more top legal news, members of the Kennedy family are speaking out, saying they're not supporting parole for the man convicted of killing Robert F. Kennedy. Sirhan was recommended for parole on Friday. He spent the last 53 years in prison for fatally shooting RFK in a Los Angeles hotel in 1968. The parole board's recommendation came after two of Kennedy's children, RFK Jr. and Douglas Kennedy, wrote in support of Sirhan's release. But now, 6 other of RFK's kids say they're devastated by the decision and are hoping for a reversal of the decision. It's now up to California's Governor Gavin Newsom if Sirhan should be released. In Georgia, prosecutors say they will continue to seek the death penalty for the accused Atlanta spa shooter. Investigators say Robert Long killed 8 people in a deadly shooting rampage in March. 6 of the victims were women of Asian descent. Last month, Long pled guilty to 23 counts for the 4 murders in Cherokee County in exchange for an in-life sentence without parole. But in Fulton County, prosecutors say they're not reaching the same deal. Long appeared in court on Monday and spoke briefly to the judge.
Mr. Long, this question is for you. Do you have any objections to the defense counsel that have been appointed or the manner in which defense counsel is conducting or has conducted the case thus far, sir?
No, sir.
In Fulton County, Long faces 19 felony charges related to 4 murders near Atlanta. The district attorney for Fulton County will seek the death penalty for Long's crimes, along with a sentence enhancement under Georgia's new hate crime law. Long is due back in court next month for his arraignment. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, Robert Durst is back on the stand. When will the cross-examination wrap up? But first, Elizabeth Holmes' shocking new defense revealed. Will the former Theranos CEO take the stand at her upcoming fraud trial? Find out after the break.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law&Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law&Crime network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law&Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law&Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. Jury selection in the highly anticipated trial of Elizabeth Holmes is slated to start this week. And now, defense attorneys for the former Theranos CEO are hinting she'll likely take the stand to accuse her former partner of abuse.
What do you dream for?
That less people have to say goodbye too soon to people they love.
That was Elizabeth Holmes in an HBO documentary talking about Theranos, the company she founded in 2003. It was promoted as a way to revolutionize medical lab testing, but federal prosecutors say it was a scam. A grand jury indicted Holmes and her former boyfriend, Theranos COO Ramesh Sunny Bhawani, in 2018 on 11 charges of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Holmes is slated to stand trial first and on her own. In a newly unsealed court document, defense attorneys say there is a significant likelihood that Ms. Holmes will testify at trial that she suffered intimate partner abuse by Belwani. Holmes met Belwani when she was 18 and he joined her company. Her attorneys now say he exercised control over her and she was unable to think clearly at the time of the alleged crimes. An expert for the defense is also expected to testify about psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse suffered by Ms. Holmes at the hands of Mr. Belwani. In a separate, newly unsealed document by Belwani's team, his attorneys are calling the accusations salacious and inflammatory. Ms. Holmes plans to introduce evidence that Mr. Belwani verbally disparaged her and withdrew affection if she displeased him. The filing goes on to allege that Mr. Belwani's control, including monitoring her calls, text messages, and emails. Physical violence such as throwing hard, sharp objects at her, restricting her sleep, monitoring her movements, and insisting on any success she achieved was because of him. Holmes is accused of defrauding investors of millions and scamming doctors and patients. They have both pled not guilty, but admit to not disclosing their relationship to investors. Back to break down the latest in the Theranos case is legal analyst Dina Dahl and Terry Austin. Terry, bringing up intimate partner abuse as a defense to making false statements, what do you think of the argument?
I think it's actually quite a good defense. It's pretty creative, if you ask me. Intimate partner abuse basically is just saying that she was abused emotionally, physically, psychologically, and it's saying that her ex-boyfriend was actually the leader in the relationship, even though she was the CEO and he was the COO. They're saying that he led her both at home, he led her at work. And this is important because the prosecution is going to need to show that she had the requisite mens rea, or the intent to commit this fraud. They said they're going to bring experts on the case, and they're going to try to demonstrate that she did actually commit this fraud. And I think knowing about this relationship is going to be very important, because at the end of the day, the prosecution is going to have to show that she knew what she was doing and that she was controlling herself and no one else was controlling her.
Yeah, it's all about what she knew and when. I'm expecting a lot of emails and correspondence back and forth to try to prove just that as the prosecution seeks to try to get that guilty verdict. Dina, do you really think Holmes will testify? Could this be a tactical move to try to separate the defendants and their stances in the case as best as possible?
I mean, very likely. We know defendants rarely testify because then she will open herself to much more questioning, questions of her credibility than she otherwise would if she wasn't going to be taking the stand. Now, what she's arguing there, that kind of like, he made me do it, might require her to testify because it speaks to really her psychological, state. And it's unclear whether or not she can prove it any other way. And that's a little bit of a problem with her defense. Most likely they had staff in their household. Did any of them see anything like this? Were friends concerned of hers? Were there emails that were controlling that she still has? If she doesn't have any other evidence, then I don't think that her lawyers will put her on the stand, because at that point, I don't think the jury would necessarily believe her, and then she's opening herself up. But if she has some evidence that backs up her claim, she might well have to take the stand to kind of put that last little spin on her claim.
Yeah, I can see that. Who else is going to be able to say, yes, I did these acts, but he forced me to? Sounds like coercion, which is a hard hill to climb, but we'll see how they plays out. Again, as in the case of U.S. v. Elizabeth Holmes. Thank you both. Turning now to California for the trial of accused murderer Robert Durst. The real estate heir is on stand for the third week of questioning. Robert Durst is on day 8 of cross-examination under prosecutor John Lewin. In court on Monday, Durst was back wearing a suit, a change from his jailhouse clothes. Judge Mark Wyndham is urging the prosecutor to wrap up his questioning, saying that Lewin has more than proven Robert Durst is not a credible witness in the killing of his best friend, Susan Berman. The defense has indicated they're also considering calling an expert on autism to speak about Durst's Asperger's diagnosis. In the state's rebuttal, prosecutors say they plan to call Andrew Jarecki, the director of the docuseries The Jinx, that interviewed Durst before his arrest. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a man accused of setting 3 fires that killed 9 people now on trial. The opening statements you don't want to miss. Plus, the infamous railroad killer. One woman's harrowing tale about being attacked by the serial killer. How she lived to tell the tale ahead. Not many people can say they've survived an attack by a serial killer, but there are people who have. Angela Levy introduces us to a woman who nearly died at the hands of the railroad killer.
Holly Dunn and her boyfriend, Chris Meyer, were attacked by a serial killer on August 28, 1997 in Lexington, Kentucky. Holly was fortunate enough to survive.
You know, it was completely the wrong place at the wrong time. My boyfriend and I were at the railroad tracks and we had been at a party. We got up to leave and this man approached us. It was complete. We didn't, we thought he just wanted money. But he ended up tying us up and gagging us. He ended up killing Chris and raping and trying to kill me.
Miraculously, Dunn survived the railroad killer, Angel Maturino Resendez. He attacked Dunn and Meyer on railroad tracks. Resendez killed as many as 14 people in several states. Dunn's testimony at a trial during the penalty phase led to his death sentence.
That was a very, very hard day. It was very hard to face him again. Even though I really wanted to do it and I knew that I wanted to do it, it was still super hard. I think if my family hadn't been there, I don't know if I could have done it, but I did.
Dunn recently told her story on A&E's I Survived a Serial Killer. She also wrote Soul Survivor, a book about her journey, and she founded Holly's House, an organization that helps survivors of trauma. How are you today?
I'm great. I mean, there are still hard days. I'm not going to lie to you and say that some days aren't still hard. The anniversary of the attack is always a hard day for me. I just know that it's going to be, and I do self-care. I appreciate my second chance at life. I know that I could have died with Chris and that I wouldn't be here telling this story. And I feel like I have to live a strong life and live a good life for all of Resendez's victims.
I Survived a Serial Killer airs on the A&E network. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Anjanette Levy.
Thanks, Anjanette. When we come back, opening statements in the newest trial on the Law and Crime Network. The Ohio man accused of killing 9 of his neighbors by setting fire to their homes. What will the defense be? Find out next. Welcome back. An Ohio man is now on trial for allegedly setting fire to his neighbors' homes, leading to the deaths of 9 people. Stanley Ford is accused of setting 3 fires in his Akron neighborhood from April 2016 to May 2017. 9 people were killed, including 5 children under the age of 15. If convicted, Ford could face the death penalty. Ford originally stood trial last March, but a mistrial was declared due to the pandemic. Before court began Monday, the jurors went to the 3 crime scenes to see the houses in person. Then, prosecutors delivered opening statements and told the jury to look to the defendant's own words to investigators.
You're going to hear that the defendant told Ellis Pope that Lindell Lewis was a vicious guy, that Lindell Lewis had buddies sitting on his front porch drinking alcohol, that Lindell Lewis had prostitutes working out of the house. The defendant told Detective Stewart that the people across the street were bad people. They stole everything. They were bothersome to everybody. They had prostitutes in and out all night and were dealing in homosexuality. That Gloria, Jeannie Hart, gets drunk and does drugs. That the people in 719 Fultz were not his friends because of his standards. And one of the guys wanted to see how long his penis was. Finally, the defendant tells Detective Stewart that Tom Hughley tried to break into his mother's house.
The defense pointed the finger at other possible suspects, claiming that 2 of the victims had unpaid dues to drug dealers and that there was another arson in the area unrelated to the defendant.
It's not a dispute that there were 3 fires set. It's not a dispute that all 3 fires were set intentionally. And it certainly is not a dispute that there were 9 deaths. In a sense, he's called the folks that would come over to Lindell Lewis's house as being rough around the edges. All right? I think what the evidence is going to show is that there is history of drug use, there is history of drug abuse, There is history of folks at that house not paying their dealers for their drugs. And you're going to hear about the conflicts that occur in that house. And you're going to hear about another instance of arson. Separate and unrelated to what's being alleged here in the state of Ohio versus Stanley Ford.
Dina, what do you make of the defense's opening of there being alternative suspects? Does the drug dealer did it defense sound reasonable to you?
Well, I think they better have some evidence to back that up, because that was some pretty strong victim blaming. If indeed they have evidence to this effect, then, that's a fairly strong defense. They need to show, they don't need to prove it, but they need to create reasonable doubt, and some sort of evidence to that would do that. But if he made such a strong statement and really has nothing to back it up, he may have just, ended the case right there, because no juror is going to want to hear that level of victim blaming.
Yeah, you've got to under-promise and over-perform. If you do it the other way around, especially opening statements, it could be a deadly result. Terry, how damaging do you see these comments the prosecutors opened with? Can you see a reasonable non-criminal explanation for what he described about his neighbors?
The prosecution, Brian, had a very powerful opening statement. It was detailed. He had displays so that the jury could understand what was going on point by point. And he showed videos, and they were very clear videos. It showed an individual, not necessarily identifying specifically that it was Stanley Ford, but it showed an individual that you could see setting the fire. I've never seen anything quite like that. And I think it was very impactful for the jury. So I definitely think that it was strong. One slight criticism is that it contained just a little bit too much detail. And I think sometimes with all the names, the dates, the addresses, it might have been a little difficult for the jury to follow. But overall, I thought he did a great job.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.